everybody, Leah Harlann here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my reading plans for the month of August because we are coming up on the end of July here. I haven't been reading a lot of books through the summer so far, as I may have mentioned in a couple other videos, but I do have some pretty big aspirations for the month of August because I'm participating in the Magical Readathon hosted by G over on Book Roast. So for those of you who have never heard of the Magical Readathon, I'll post a link to the sort of intro video or by G, as well as a link to sort of relevant information. There's like a Google Drive with all of the documentation and imagery and things like that. But basically, it's sort of a themed reading challenge that takes place primarily in the months of April and August each year, where you have a character and choose a sort of major or calling for them, and then read books with prompts based on the classes that your character has to take for that calling. I first participated in this year's April, which is the spring equinox. I decided to play as myself, of course, whereas many people who are participating, of course, have to create a character for this sort of fantasy setting. I decided to sort of role play it as me getting to do a sort of exchange program for the time that I'm studying there. And for me, that makes it a lot more fun because, you know, my character is not from the world setting that G has come up with called Eldia, and that means that I interact with it a little differently from most of the characters people generate for this readathon. But creating a character is very fun, and there's even a specific reading challenge themed around that called the Novice Path that I highly recommend. And then for the month of August, that will be the autumn equinox. So in the spring, you just take classes, so it's a little bit easier. I only had to read 5 books as my required reading list for the month. And then there are additional prompts you can do for like side quests and things like that. But for August, the autumn equinox, this is considered to be like exam season. And so for every class that you had to take in the spring, there is an exam that you take, and you have to achieve a certain tier of success to pass that class. And so some classes you only have to read 1 book, just like in the spring, but for other classes you may have to read 2 or even 3 books in order to achieve the grade required to pass that class in the autumn. So autumn is a little more difficult, but when you pass the spring and autumn equinox for a calling, you rank up at the end of that. So it's sort of like for each year of study, you will move up a level in that calling's ranking system. So if you are interested in joining the readathon and you're only just now hearing about it, I highly recommend doing things like the Novice Path and other side challenges, like building your character, and then perhaps starting in the spring with the spring equinox next April. Otherwise, it may be a little confusing, and like I said, the requirements for the autumn equinox are a little bit higher. So if you don't have a lot of confidence in being able to suddenly read, I know some people in this readathon challenge are reading upwards of 12 to 20 books, either because they have multiple characters with callings or because they chose callings that have particularly high requirements during the exam season. So if that's a little intimidating, definitely just take your time and do some of the other content that G provides for this Magical Readathon, and then feel free to jump on board next April. But since I did do the spring equinox, I will be participating in the autumn equinox as normal. My calling that I chose that felt most in line with what I already have thematically been studying for my character is a scribe. And so for the scribe calling, there were only, like I said, 5 books that I had to read in the spring because I only have 5 classes for this calling. But there are 2 classes in which I have to read more than 1 book. So my total TBR of required books for the autumn equinox is 7. And I'll put here, this is a template I made. Let me scoot over. So over here you can see, let me see if I can get my hand. There we go. Nope. Can I? working the camera. Over here, you can see, I'll just give up on it, I think. Oh, okay. Over here, you can see a template that I made for myself on Canva. Librarians do love Canva, so it was pretty fun to play around and build this for myself. And this is my, so this has all of my classes as well as the grades and prompts that I need to complete by the end of August. So you can see every class has O, this is ordinary, which is the lowest level of completion that you need. And then there's Q, which is qualified, which you can see a couple classes I need to achieve that grade, or well, one of them, lore. And then in inscription, which is probably the most important class for scribes, I have to achieve the highest level of exam grade, which is D for distinguished. And then inside each frame, I also posted the prompt that I have to fulfill with each book. So I'll just kind of quickly go over what the prompt is and what I've chosen for each one. And you'll be able to see at the end my sort of filled out template. So the first one, every sort of exam class in the autumn equinox has something that you're studying for it, or like an exam you're taking. So the first class we'll go over is inscription, because that's the one I have the most to do. The ordinary level is the magical glyph for tidying. And so for this one, the prompt is to read a book from your end of the year TBR. And if any of you watched my mid-year freakout video, you'll know that there were a few books I listed at the end that I wanted to read before the end of the year. So the one I'm choosing to fulfill this prompt is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. It was also on my mid-year video, the book that I was really looking forward to or had released, but I hadn't gotten to it yet. So this is a great motivator to get that book going and hopefully finish it quickly so that I don't put it down or get distracted. The Q level prompt is for wards and shields. And this is a prompt that a lot of people in the Magical Readathon community were struggling with. So it was kind of fun watching us all discuss it, because we have to find a book with either a shield on the cover or the word shield in the title. So there were so many people, we were all running around trying to find books. And, I will say at first, it seemed like it was going to be rather difficult, but through the collective efforts of everyone hunting down different books, there are quite a few good fantasy recommendations that fulfill this prompt. And the one that I decided to choose was a rather hefty fantasy book that I've heard so many good things about, but just really hadn't found a reason to bump it up the TBR or prioritize it, and now I do. And that book is Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. And at first glance, you don't see shield anywhere on this cover, but if you look down there in the bottom right corner, all the way down there, you can see a little tiny person, and that person has a shield. Here, I'll give you a zoom in. So this book does fulfill the shield prompt, and so I will read it, but I believe it's over 500, close to or over 500 pages. So I'm a little intimidated. Might put that one off until later in the. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to prioritize things. I guess I'm going to, based on what I'm borrowing from the library to read for this prompt, for this readathon. But yeah, I'm not sure when I'll tackle Shadow of the Gods. Could be towards the middle. Might be towards the end if I procrastinate. The next prompt for the distinguished tier of inscription course is advanced penmanship, which I've been told I have pretty good handwriting, so I'm pretty confident. And the prompt is read a book that's not a debut. Pretty easy, pretty broad. The one I'm going to read for this is actually another one that I'm really excited to get to, which is Mammoths at the Gates by Nhi Vo. This is a novella, and it's the 4th entry in her Singing Hills cycle. I do have an advanced digital arc from NetGalley, and I'm very excited to get to it. I wanted to save this. I've been sitting on it for a little while, but I wanted to save it until it was closer to release. And the novella does release in September, so hopefully when I do a sort of a video going over, like my rapid fire reviews or relatively flowery reflections for my readathon TBR, I'll be able to time it closer to the release of the novella. So I'm very, very excited to get to that one. I've heard so many good things already from other people who have received advanced copies of it. The next class is Restoration, and I only need to receive an ordinary grade in that, and the spell is Induce Sleep. I wish I could cast that on myself since I tend to have trouble falling asleep at night. And the prompt is to start a book before bed. This is the other kind of prompt that G sometimes sprinkles in throughout the readathon prompts. A lot of them are, of course, going to be restrictions on what kind of book you can read, like the 3 that were for the inscription class. But this one is one that I, as the reader, have a lot of control over. I can pretty much pick any book. I just have to start reading it before bedtime. And that's pretty easy because I do read a lot before bed when I know I'm not really tired yet. So this one I'm actually leaving completely open for the time being. I have not selected a book for it because I want to give myself some flexibility to have like a mood read. You know, if something comes up during the month that I hadn't heard about but sounds really, really good and I really, really want to read it, I don't want to have to stop myself because, I have to do my readathon books before I can read this. You know, that's a good way to kill enthusiasm. So I'm leaving this prompt open for any book that I suddenly have the whim to read during the month of August. Moving on to my next class, which is Elemental Studies. I, again, only need to receive an O in this class, so only one book needed, but the prompt, because the spell or the topic for the exam is the element of earth, we have to find and read a book with the word earth in the title. This was another one that has a lot of people in the readathon server scratching their heads or, trying to hunt down recommendations because, and I also struggled with this one because I looked over and for some reason, not a single book in my TBR, both my physical TBR, as well as I looked through my whole list of books that I've marked as want to read on Storygraph and Goodreads, and not a single book in there had the word earth in its title, which really stumped me. Now, some people are expanding, expanding their interpretation of this prompt so that the word earth can be in the series title as well. So one example would be the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. None of the books themselves have the word earth in the title, but because it is the Broken Earth trilogy, some people are choosing to read those books, like the 5th season and the subsequent ones, which I could, I guess, choose to do. I could have chosen to do because I did read the 5th season, but I haven't read the other 2 books in the trilogy yet. But I held myself to kind of wanting to stick to just keeping it in the title of the book. And after a while, I realized that there is a book that I've been meaning to read for a long time that I missed out on in my childhood that a lot of people seem to have a lot of love and nostalgia for. And that is The Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. And so I really am looking forward to it. It's a pretty short read, only around 200 pages, I think. And so that's going to be great for me in case some of these books start to feel like more of an obligation rather than something I'm excited to check out. But it's also a way to get me to read things that I might not pick up otherwise. So I'm excited for that one. Moving on to the lore class. This is the last class that I need to fulfill prompts for, but I need to achieve a Q or qualified rating or exam grade in this class. So the first one is the Tale of the Guide is the course topic, and for that one we need to get a bookseller's recommendation. Now, this is, I believe G said in her video going over the prompts that you can also take a librarian's recommendation. And, well, I mean, it'd be kind of cheating if I just recommended myself a book, at least the way I see it. And it could have been fun to ask some of my classmates from school for a recommendation, but I wanted to take it more true to the prompt and go out and get a bookseller's recommendation. There were a few different ways you could choose to tackle this. A lot of people are going, looking online or asking people in the server, like, hey, if you're a bookseller or a librarian, recommend me something. Or sort of like looking on bookselling websites and seeing what kind of comes up on the front page, what's been recommended recently. I took the most direct, literal interpretation of this. I walked into my local Barnes & Noble and I told them, hey, I have a reading challenge and I'm supposed to read something that has been recommended to me by a bookseller. I really like fantasy and some sci-fi, and I'm interested to see what you would recommend me. And what was really funny was that the woman I spoke to, she was very nice, but she said, I'm actually one of the few people who work here who don't read a lot of fantasy or sci-fi. And she said, but I did read, this one kind of recently. And so she points at To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. And while I do hope someday to check out that series, I look at the back, and sure enough, it's like a 450 to 500 page chonker of a book. And I've already picked Shadow of the Gods at this point. And it's sci-fi, and I'm already kind of trying to check out the sci-fi stuff I already own. And so I'm thinking, I don't know about that one. So I thank her, kind of let her, she's like, there's a couple other people that you could probably ask that are here, but most of them are off today. So, you just kind of are unlucky about when you decided to come in. Real shame. But I did run into another young woman who was sort of just fixing up the shelves and stuff. And so I asked her, I was like, hey, what do you have for me? And she's like, well, I don't read a lot of fantasy. My sister has been telling me about a couple, and she kind of goes over with me to the fantasy section, and she points out a couple that I've already read and a couple that are just really mainstream picks. She even points to A Day of Fallen Night, and I'm like, oh, please God, not that one. I can't do that this month. I have to read it in a month. But eventually she mentions offhand, she says, oh, well, I do read a lot of manga. I more read manga and other stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, hold on, stop there. I read manga. I read a lot of manga. Let's mosey over to the manga section. What have you got for me there? And so we start talking about a lot of different manga, and we go over some of the shonen stuff and some of the popular shoujo romance stuff. She throws out Skip to Loafer. We talk about, this new wave of isekai romance, like shoujo romance that has been coming around. And she mentions Yona of the Dawn, which I love, and I really have been meaning to reread because I kind of I fell off. And then she said, I've also been checking out short stories and things and novellas by Japanese authors. And I'm like, oh, like what? And the first thing she recommends, and the one that I finally settled on as my bookseller recommendation after all of this talking around, is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. If you haven't already heard about it, this one was something that a lot of people were going crazy for on Book Talk and other places earlier this year. I think was when I saw most of the buzz around it. It's about this little coffee shop that's tucked away in Tokyo, and it serves coffee that when you, I think it's when you take a sip of the coffee, you can travel back in time to a moment or like a time of your choosing, but you can only stay as long as the cup of coffee you were served stays hot. So once it cools off, you're brought back. And I believe you have limited influence over what happens as well. And so this is sort of a series of short stories inside, a collection of short stories inside the book of all these different people, customers who come into the coffee shop and then, travel back in time. So I'm very excited to try that one out. And it was kind of fun to have it recommended to me directly by a total stranger at Barnes & Noble, as opposed to just, following the social media hype for it. And then the last book that I have to read is the topic for lore being cursed cloaks, which means I have to pick a book with clothing on the cover. And G did explain in her video going over the prompts that it doesn't have to just be an article of clothing. It can be somebody wearing clothes. It can be a book that has a person on the cover that's obviously going to be fully clothed. So that does make the prompt a lot more open as opposed to finding a book that just has clothing and not worn clothes. So this one, I also have quite a few options. I was kind of surprised once I started going through my TBR how many have covers with a character wearing clothing. So let me just, I'm going to leave it undecided for now, but let me just read off to you all of the different books, titles on my TBR that I have already checked are valid choices for this prompt. So first is Witch King by Martha Wells, Bungo Stray Dogs Volume 1, the light novel. I have been wanting to check out the light novel series for quite a while. Moldao Zushi Volume 1, this would be a reread, but I've been wanting to go through my physical copies of the books for a while. Song of Silver, Flame Like Night. This has a very tiny person on the cover, but they are wearing clothes, so valid fit for the prompt. Jade Fire Gold, Amari and the Great Game, The Oleander Sword, The Hanged Man, The Merciless Ones, Bloodmarked, and The Midwinter Witch. All of these are books that I have been wanting to get to. You'll notice most of them are sequels, and I've been wanting to get to them, but didn't really have a reason to prioritize them. So any of them could end up fulfilling this prompt. And so that's why I'm leaving it open-ended, and that means it can be another sort of mood read pick for me before the end of the month. And that way, I could just pick another one of those for my restoration prompt as well. We'll kind of be able to see how I'm feeling. Some of them are, I'm more excited or to read or want to check out than others. Some of them I have physical copies, some of them I do not. And so it'll kind of just be based on what I'm feeling like and how I want to handle my TBR by the time we're later in the month. So yeah, that is all of my required reading for the Magical Readathon, but there are a couple other sort of bonus things that can be done this month. What do they call? Supplementary opportunities and qualifications. Sometimes people just read books for other classes as like sort of extracurriculars, but these are like proper extracurricular activities and exams and things that you can do. They're divided into, there's 4 total that are divided into 2 types. There are qualifications and then there are opportunities. So the 2 qualifications that you can earn this semester are a dragon riding license and a sand ship engineer certification, both of which sound super cool. And the 2 opportunities are apothecary keeper, which is again super cool, and a bog cataloger, which I think was a joke calling that G has brought up before, and now, she made it a proper opportunity. I know a lot of people in the server were really excited to see that one. The bog ponderer is a former calling, and so the bog cataloger is like an opportunity to probably work with and study with bog ponderers without having to take on the full calling. And so every one of these qualifications and opportunities has requirements that you need to fulfill. But it goes beyond just reading, which I think is really fun and another way to get people doing like fun activities during this month. So the one I'm most interested in is the dragon riding license. It's sort of a thing where you sign up and you go through a training, and the requirements for the dragon riding license are to read 2 books with dragons and then watch a movie or a show with a dragon. And if you know me, you know I will never pass up an opportunity to consume content with dragons. I've always loved dragons, and we're seeing a sort of renaissance in fantasy publishing with a lot of dragon-themed books. And I know what everyone's thinking. Oh my gosh, everyone's going to read, or you're going to read Fourth Wing. Everyone's going to read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I am staunchly refusing to read Fourth Wing.
What? No, I don't want to do that.
You're going to have a great time.
No.
You might meet some new people.
No.
You'll even make some new friends.
No. No.
So instead, let me just briefly review. The first book that I want to try to read for this license is To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. I've heard... Well, I actually haven't heard much discussion about this book, even though it came out in early May. It is it's about an indigenous woman getting a pet dragon and going to a colonizer-run dragon academy. So this sounds like a better version of the premise of Fourth Wing to me. Like Fourth Wing is like military academy with dragons, and it's like a spicy romance fantasy. But this one is Dragon Academy, but with like an indigenous woman, and it's anti-colonizer. And so like that sounds a lot more interesting to me. The second one that I want to read, I've kind of left open. I have a few different books that could, there's like a few different dragon themed books on my TBR that could fulfill it. there's a sort of collection of short stories that I was interested in called The Book of Dragons. And then the other one that I've been wanting to check out for a while, yes, A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. This one's the beginning of a series called The Memoirs of Lady Trent. And so, yeah, there's like all kinds of dragon books on my TBR that I've been wanting to read for a while and haven't gotten to. So I figured if I have the time, this dragon writing license qualification is a very fun opportunity to add some more books that I might actually get to. It really depends on how long it takes me to get through my main TBR. My another semester of my librarian school training does start up again in August as well. So, you know, once classes start, I'm not sure how my pacing will look. But, you know, keeping it just in case. It's an entirely optional way of getting some more fun content out of the readathon. So it's also, you know, like there aren't any stakes if I fail it. Whereas like I do need to complete my main autumn equinox exam. I think that covers everything though for my autumn equinox reading plans. I'll post a shorter version, or I'll try to post like short updates on TikTok throughout the month as I'm going through them, especially because some of these books are ones I've been really looking forward to reading for months now. But yes, so here is the final template for my scribe. You'll see I left the 2 open that I haven't decided on yet, and I'll be sure to post an update once I do decide on them. If you're also participating in the Magical Readathon, let me know. What kind of character do you have? What callings are you following? Are you doing any of the extra opportunities and qualifications or the demonology side quest? You know, are you in the server? We could, you know, tell me what guild you're in. I'm in the Archivists. And yeah, I would just also really love it if more people join the readathon. It's incredibly fun. So that's it for this video, though. If you feel like it, please like, comment, subscribe. If you want to leave a reply, yeah, just tell me what you're reading for the month of August, even if you're not doing the readathon. Thank you so much. I hope you all read something great, and I'll see you next time.